Hey, I don't know how to say this, but I think I might want to break up. No, I found someone else. There is some, no, yes, I am with them now. I am with them right now, and it's just, they are so consistent. And you are just so a roller coaster, like no consistency. You never follow through. You're just always stuck around, never doing anything. And I also, they're really hot. I like rhinos. I officially have a new favorite deck in EDISON format. Goodbye, Montage Dragon and Berserk Dragon. You fought well. But did they fight well? Did they really fight well? I mean, they both kind of lost to one interruption. That's not a spot you want to be in when almost every single meta deck plays like 12 trap cards. But I will be in that spot no more. You see, the deck I have created today is basically immune to trap cards. And when I mention immune to trap cards, you already know I'm talking about my favorite card, Winged Rhinos. Activated trap card, bounces back to the hand. Easy, dodged, not a problem. Remember when I said Winged Rhinos was broken, but it just hasn't found the right deck? Folks, I found the right deck. This is the deck, my new favorite EDISON deck. I'm so excited. But wait, stealing content alert, not today. Although I've been a Winged Rhinos enjoyer for a very long time, the interaction that pulled this bouncy boy out of the ashes was discovered by WDNR. WDNR was featured in a Carpath What Are They Cooking video about a week ago, and I watched that video and my mind was blown. I was on the edge of my seat witnessing what was unfolding, and what was unfolding was accumulated fortune. This card was made for Winged Rhinos. People normally play this card in chain beat decks and more degenerate style of decks, but WDNR figured out that this is the Rhinos deck's pot of avarice. This is the draw 2 the deck needed, and it is so easy to pull off in this show. The primary interaction that this whole deck revolves around that WDNR discovered is that if you have Winged Rhinos on the field, a draw spell, and accumulated fortune, all you need is your opponent to activate one card. Ideally, it will be Heavy Storm. And then you can go Chainlink 1, their card, Chainlink 2, your draw spell, Chainlink 3, the Winged Rhinos to bounce to the hand, and Chainlink 4, accumulated fortune, draw 2. That is the interaction. Very good and a lot easier to pull off than in other decks that rely on you having 4 chainable traps all at the same time. Winged Rhinos is a chainable effect every single turn, so the more accumulated fortunes you draw into, the more likely you are going to be to activate them. However, WDNR's original concept was within a Garden Stun shell. And as someone who has not taken the time to memorize all of the Garden rulings in EDISON format, this was a little intimidating. And so I reached out to them, and we've been cooking, and I believe the deck has gone in a spicy, innovative, and sick direction. My version of the deck, or I guess our version because we've been collaborating together, bouncing off ideas, but this version does not play Garden and goes in a slightly different direction, but oh boy, it's so much fun. Here is the deck list, and as you can see, it's unbelievably spicy. There are 25 trap cards, 3 offerings to the doom, so much to explain. Let me get started. First of all, the best card in the deck is Winged Rhinos. This entire deck is built around this card, and oh boy, does it shine. When a trap card is activated, Winged Rhinos can bounce itself to the hand. This works extremely well with chainable draw spells because it is essentially compulsing your own monster. If your opponent targets either your back row or your Winged Rhinos, you can chain the draw spell and then chain the Winged Rhinos. Both of those cards can get value and your opponent's removal looks very silly. Essentially, this makes the deck Caius proof. They have to either risk hitting a chainable trap or target the monster just for that monster to bounce itself off of the field. Trap decks normally lose to Heavy Storm and they have to play bad cards like Dark Bribe and Starlight Road to compensate, but not this deck. In this deck, Heavy Storm is a playmaker. It is a chain for you to draw cards off of. And the ideal scenario this deck gets in is you have 4 chainable draw spells, your opponent activates Heavy Storm, and you use them and draw into Gores or Trag. Gores and Trag in a trap deck normally don't make sense, but they make perfect sense in this one. Not only does this stop you from dying, something that trap decks really struggle with, but more importantly, it is so annoying for your opponent to deal with. They cannot Brionic bounce your entire field without risking losing the game on the spot. And also, most Edison players are good. They're going to play around Gores. But if they attack into 3 back row and there are 3 draw spells, they can't play around it. You force them to play into Gores. The other major change that this deck takes from the Garden version is the Gadgets. The Gadgets are so good in this deck. Remember when I was talking about this deck being immune to trap cards? The Gadgets are basically immune to trap cards because they replace themselves. Your opponent does not feel good activating a D-Prison on a Gadget. I mean, chain beat decks of the future would play Madolche Mageline and this weird Photon Saber Tiger card for the exact same idea. If you open a hand of 1 Gadget and 5 traps, well, that is unreal. And best of all, the same scenario applies to the Winged Rhinos. If you open Winged Rhinos and 5 traps, well, that is a Winged Rhinos normal summon every single turn versus a Gadget normal summon every single turn. This game plan becomes even more consistent with my other major innovation, Good Goblin Housekeeping. Like Reckless Greed, this card gets better and better the deeper you go in your deck. And with Rhinos and Gadgets, even the first copy is neutral advantage. The best part of this deck is that you only really need 1 normal summon a turn. The Gadgets and Rhinos are basically infinite monsters, so Good Goblin Housekeeping can take an extra normal summon and replace it with a trap card. Not to mention, it is a chainable trap that you can use to bounce Rhinos. And if you see multiple Good Goblin Housekeepings in a game, which you will likely do because of how much you are drawing, the third copy is draw 3 cards and put a Gadget on the bottom of your deck. That's ridiculous. That is unreal advantage. That is better than accumulated fortune. That is insane. And it gives you another Gadget to get out of the deck? What the heck? That's crazy. You play every good trap in Edison format and an emphasis on the chainable traps like Compulse because they work well with accumulated fortune. I like these traps because your opponent can't really play around them. Let's say they want to go into a Stardust to play around Torrential Mirror Force. Well, you might have a Compulse, or they go into Thought Ruler because of the same thing, and you have Mirror Force Torrential. It's a really nice thing where your opponent has to just gamble what you might not have. Reckless Greed is ridiculously good in this deck. Basically, remember the Rhinos accumulated fortune combo in the beginning. If you replace one of the draw spells with Reckless Greed, well, Reckless Greed and Accumulated Fortune is drawing 4 cards and skipping 2 draw phases, so that's basically the exact same thing as having 2 Reckless Greeds. So this deck can just pile advantage. Your draw 2s are going to be crazy, and the craziest part about it is you'll probably draw into more draw 2s, and if you draw into more Reckless, well, you're going to be skipping a draw phase anyway, and so you just get more and more advantage the deeper you get in your deck. Not to mention, Reckless is very good with offerings to the Doom. This card was in a winning list at a YCS like 2 years ago. It was in Sky Strikers, and it is incredible removal. No one plays it in Edison format because, well, you have to skip a draw phase, which is not that great in a very grindy, resource-intensive format. But in this deck, with the consistency, you will see Reckless Greeds, and the amount of monsters you run that go +1 anyway, like this is the deck for Offerings to the Doom. And it is chainable for Accumulated Fortune, and it is removal, which is one of this deck's major problems because you need some way to remove high attack threats to get value out of your gadgets and your rhinos in the battle phase. I could honestly talk about this deck all day. I have so much to say, but I'm gonna cut it off there. Let's show off some of the gameplay. Obviously, you can already tell I love this deck. I already said it's my favorite deck now, so yeah, let's check it out. Let's see what it can do, and it can do a lot. Let's get into the games. All right, first game with the Winged Rhinos deck, and what are we up against but Blackwings? You see, I think the only thing that's different with this list than the new list is I replaced the Smashing Grounds with the Offerings to the Doom. But I think Offerings to the Doom is better, and we can honestly look at this game and see like what would have been better in certain scenarios. So we're just going to set a back row. Our opponent is going to attack into Gores without knowing it. We will take 800 and drop this Gores Emissary of Darkness, and then they are just going to set a back row and pass their turn. We draw a good Goblin Housekeeping, which is not too bad. We're going to switch our guys to attack, and my opponent does have the Mirror Force, the Gores outplay, but that's so fine. We're going to set a couple of cards and pass our turn. We're going to take this 800. Just kidding, we do decide it to deprison. I mean, it's a fair trade because we have another deprison and we don't really want that value to go to the graveyard. And then my opponent's going to set to back row and pass their turn. We draw a starter in the red Gadget. We're going to summon that red Gadget. This gets a yellow Gadget from our deck to our hand. We're then going to attack our opponent for 1300 damage, set a back row, and pass our turn. They're going to activate Black Whirlwind. We did not set the Torrential, but that is honestly fine. They're going to normal summon their Sirocco, get a Shura, go into the battle phase, and we are going to activate the second deprison. We don't want that to go to the graveyard either because of the potential of more values. We draw a card, and it is a Legacy of Yatagarasu. We're going to normal summon a yellow Gadget, add a green Gadget from our deck to our hand, go into the battle phase, attack our opponent for 12 and 13. We set 2 more back row and pass our turn. They're going to normal summon this card again. I do want to say in this scenario, the Offerings would be better than the Smashing Ground. Just having something chainable, like 2 chain to the normal summon, is extremely powerful, and so I think it's a fair trade. And because we've got these gadgets in rotation, we don't really need the extra draw. So my opponent is going to do that, special summon a Bora, and in this instance, we do decide to Torrential Tribute, but the cool thing is we can do even more things. We're going to chain the Torrential and get a huge chain so we can draw a ton of cards and put back the extra gadget we don't need. One of the cool things this deck can do, and now my opponent's just going to pass their turn. We draw a Bottomless Trap Hole. We're going to summon the Winged Rhinos, attack our opponent for 1800 life points, set a couple of cards, and pass our turn. My opponent is going to normal summon a Blizzard, and in this scenario, the Smashing Ground would be really nice if it was the Offerings to the Doom, but it is not, unfortunately, so we're just going to let them do that interaction, and then they are going to Synchro Summon into a Bryonic, and they do decide to use priority, discarding a value, and they target the Winged Rhinos, and now we can activate a Compulse, and then chain the Winged Rhinos, and then chain Accumulated Fortune. I mean, that's one of the coolest interactions I've ever seen, and just, I love this deck. That is so cool. We retain the card, they had to discard a card, and now they are going to use their value in the graveyard, but we do have the Bottomless Trap Hole, and then they are just going to pass their turn. We draw a good Goblin Housekeeping. We're going to summon this Winged Rhinos. They are going to Bottomless Trap Hole, but you see, my cards are immune to trap cards. the Winged Rhinos can bounce itself to the hand even on opponent's trap cards, and so we will lose no value, set a couple of cards, and pass our turn. My opponent's going to normal summon a Shura, and we do have the bottomless trap hole. They pass, we draw another Winged Rhinos. We're going to activate Good Goblin Housekeeping. We draw 2 cards now because we have 1 Good Goblin in the graveyard. Return a Gadget that we do not need, attack our opponent for 1800, set 2 back row, and pass our turn. And a Compulse on the Kalut is game. Next up, we have a game against a strange plant deck, but it shows off some of the cool stuff this deck can do, and I believe I was on Smashing Ground 2 for this game, but just pretend in your head that it is the offerings. We're going to set 3 back row, and then my opponent is going to set another card, and then we are just going to pass again. My opponent flips up this Dandelion, normal summons a Debris Dragon, and goes into a Black Rose Dragon. Against any other trap deck, that might be good, but we can just draw 3 cards, and now they've destroyed their own Mystic Tomato for some crazy value. We're going to normal summon a Winged Rhinos, and they are going to activate this card, which is not bad into Winged Rhinos because it negates the summon, and so the Winged Rhinos cannot activate. But this other Winged Rhinos is chilling in our hand, so we are not too worried. They're going to normal summon a Lone Fire Blossom, make a Titanial, go into the battle phase, and on declaration, we can activate this Good Goblin Housekeeping. This draws a card, puts a card back, and lets us summon this Gore's Emissary of Darkness. We draw the Good Goblin Housekeeping, and you see in this instance, the smashing is slightly better than the offerings to the Doom, but what we could do is just go into the battle phase, attack the token, and then chain offerings to the Doom to destroy the Titanial and still get in the exact same amount of damage. And we don't really need our draw next turn, so in this instance, I still think offerings would have been better, but it's kind of funny that smashing is really good against Titanial. My opponent's going to activate this Mark of the Rose to steal our big token, but we are just going to activate a D-Prison on that card. They're going to set a monster and pass their turn. We're going to activate Good Goblin Housekeeping. This lets us draw 2 cards because we have 1 in the graveyard. We put a card back, normal summon a Gadget, get a green Gadget to our hand, go into the battle phase, and my opponent activates Mirror Force, but we have the Solemn Judgment. Even if Mirror Force resolved, we just bounce the Winged Rhinos, and we are still in a very good commanding spot. Our opening hand looks pretty good in game number 2. They're going to bring out a Titanial. We're just going to Smashing Ground. Again, the offerings would have done the exact same thing. Normal summon a Gadget, attack our opponent for 1200, set a couple of back row. Just kidding, we're only going to set 1 because Accumulated Fortune cannot activate when cards are in the same chain. So we do this play instead because we had the Trag, and we are rewarded because we did draw into a Good Goblin Housekeeping, which is another chainable card. We're going to set those back row, normal summon a Gadget. This gets a red Gadget to our hand, and we do decide to set the bottomless trap hole, and they did have the Heavy Storm just like I predicted, but in this instance you can see the Heavy Storm is not too bad because we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. You always want to chain Good Goblin first because it lets you put the card to the bottom of the deck after you draw with the rest of the cards. So we draw all of those cards, and then we can put a Gadget to the bottom of the deck, and that Heavy Storm just destroyed the bottomless trap hole. They're going to crash into the green Gadget. They get out a Violet Witch. I do love this card, and then they are going to attack into this to search another Lone Fire Blossom for follow-up. But on the damage of this Titanial, we can drop the Tragodia, which is very good because it will go up to 3000, and they don't have a back row. Although we draw another Gadget, which is not too great, we are in a very commanding spot. We're just going to set this card and pass. I also like that you can do like battle tricks with the Trag with these draw spells, like if they try to attack over it, but that does not happen. They just activate Giant Trunade, and look at this. We get to draw 2 cards, put 1 back. Good Goblin is such a powerful card. They're just going to think for a little bit. They're going to normal summon Debris Dragon, and instead of going into Black Rose, they decide to go into an Ancient Fairy in defense position. I don't know why they did this because our Tragodia will go up to 36, so we can just try to clear their monster, set a back row, and pass, and we can trap dash shoot them. And you see they had Titanial, Rose, and Nettles. We take their Lone Fire Blossom, and they leave the duel. Okay, so I normally play casual games with the decks, but for this episode, I only played rated games. All of my opponents were incredibly good, and the deck is incredibly broken. And the best part about it is it's broken in the least broken way. It's broken because it's so fair. Let's talk about the pros and cons. The pros. Number one, this deck can outgrind any other deck. There are so many ways to get 2-for-1s and to get a lot of advantage in this deck. And as a result, you pretty much have no bad matchups. Every single game is about you outvaluing your opponent and outwitting them. Which brings me to number two. You pretty much don't have any weaknesses. I'm used to playing decks that lose automatically to Oppression, Fossil Dyna, Macrocosmos. Not this deck. This deck plays so low to the ground that your opponent cannot cheese you, and they basically have to outduel you to win. Number three, you are immune to trap cards, especially bottomless trapple. Look at this deck. What is your opponent gonna bottomless? Winged Rhinos? No. A Gadget? No. Gore's Trag and the damage step? No. It plays so well into trap cards, and when every single meta deck basically plays 10 traps, you are in an extremely good spot against the current meta. And number four, the deck is hard. I recently have been getting so sick to my stomach every single time I play a duel that is decided by one card. I hate when my opponent flips a Royal Oppression and a game turns into a non-game. That's like modern Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. That's like summon limit stuff. That should not be happening in EDISON format. And with this deck being so low to the ground and so grindy and fun, it is really up to you to win. This deck is so fun to play because you are never not playing. The deck is hard, you have to work to win, but at least you can try every single game. And the cons. Number one, this deck is hard. It is so hard. And because your cards are so efficient, one mistake can lose you the game. One lost Rhino, that's like losing 5 normal summons, and that compounds throughout the game. So you need to be extremely careful with everything you do, and this means you're going to lose a lot of games because of a decision you make in turn 2 or 3, even if the game eventually ends in turn 15. Number 2, Royal Decree. I mean, you have a side deck game plan with the 3 breakers and the Heavy Storm, but if you don't see it and your opponent draws that in their opening hand, yeah, you could get cheesed and lose. I know I said the deck can't be cheesed, but I do like to think that with the amount of trap cards people play, people are playing less Decree. I mean, we're not in a Lightsworn format anymore, so you will see Decree less, but if you do see it at the right time and you don't have an answer, yeah, you'll get cheesed. You'll probably lose. And number 3, 2K defense walls. Basically, you'll start losing advantage if you have to devote a lot of cards to getting over small threats. But overall, the deck is good. It is competitive in the best way possible. It can get insane advantage, but that advantage is not handed to you. You need to create that advantage. This deck is so fun and so fair. I'm gonna put this deck in the competitive tier. I told you guys Winged Rhinos was good. This card is so good. It basically has an entire deck built around it now. It carries the whole deck on its shoulders. Having quick effects is fun. It's like that sweet spot in Yu-Gi-Oh where they give players things to do on their opponent's turn to get into interesting game states. And it's bad when there's negates, but it's really good when it's something like Winged Rhinos that you can use to outvalue and outplay your opponent. This deck completely changed my entire philosophy of the type of duelist I thought I was. I mean, sure, I like OTKing with Montage Dragon, but I also kind of like playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And with this deck, you play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe too much Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you will be going into time a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, let's see if you think this deck is as good as I do. And I also need to consider that I guess I can influence the market now, so don't buy out all the cards. Hopefully it doesn't really matter with this deck, unlike the Worm deck. That was a weird situation because those cards were like already bought out. But I think like Offerings is like 10 cents, Rhinos is like 10 cents, Good Goblins like 10 cents. I think all the spicy cards are cheap, so if you want to build the deck, obviously play it online first before you listen to me and make any decisions. But hopefully it's not a problem with this deck. Hopefully maybe they rise to like, I don't know, 50 cents from 10 cents. But it's so much fun. I can guarantee you will have more fun playing this deck than some of the other Cursed Tech decks, because you have to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you have to get better as a duelist to win with this deck. And that's kind of inspiring. I don't know if that's like the ending speech of the movie that I need to be giving right now, but I just gave it, so let's leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.